Hey guys and girls, welcome back to YYC Designz Custom RC Creations. A little bit of a different video for you this time. I'm going to do an update on all of our projects that I got going on, which is Voodoo, double cabin cruiser builds, root beer, black rose, and a couple of new things, as well as London Calling and Miss Moose, the two wreckers. So we've got a lot going on in the shop, and yes, they take time, but you know, it's just, I have a lot of fun building these. I have a lot of fun videoing them and showing you the steps I go through to make our creations here. And I figured I may as well update you on all of them to let you know where your favorite project is in the build process. So let's get started with stuff, yeah? Okay, so on this update video, we'll start with a little root beer and where I am with that. Now, root beer is in a situation where I have the cab done, I've got the box done, I've got all the major body panels done here, the engine side panels, tailgate. So now it's all down to the little stuff, yeah? Now, as I said before, I've got this RC four-wheel drive single speed tranny that we're getting ready to stick in her. I had to make the motor mounts because of course this is a shop made frame. So the motor mounts here, as you can see, I've mounted or getting ready to mount the motor in slightly transverse, so it's center. It's exactly the way it would have been on a RCR or RCR on an RTR frame, a ready to run frame that you would buy as a kit, only now I make all those little pieces. And that's why we're just doing the update video here, as I said before, is because all of these little pieces that I make are very, very hard for me to show y'all on video because I don't have good enough camera to show working on it as I go. That being said, I kind of would like to show you how I started out. So now the motor mounts are just basically the 1/2 inch square tube steel, like I said, with a 1/8 wall. Okay, now they're all cut down into channel to make the frame rails here. But what I do is I take the sides off the channels and basically make it a little piece of flat stock to work with. I then took them, I lined them up. I basically lined them up so I could put a couple of holes in them. I put a nice weld on both sides, and then I cut them down to shape and to size, and I angled them correctly just through fit and all of that here. So this is what you have, is you have the two angled motor mounts that are ready to hold the motor. So the next piece for root beer is going to be the transfer case mount, which will come in somewhere here on the frame. Now this model is a 10 scale. Notice I call them models all the time. It's because I do not believe these are toys. I would not give a kid a steel RC model. These things can do damage. They are solid steel. They can do damage to hitting things or whatever. They're not like that plastic junk they sell out on the websites and all of that all over the place. These things are damn sturdy. They're made out of steel, no plastic to them. It's going to do damage if they hit something. Yes, of course they will get dented, but they are going to do some serious damage to whatever they hit. So they are models. These are not toys. My opinion, but that's the way I like to express it. So anyhow, now I'm also making the shock mounts as well as the transfer case mounts. How I make the shock mounts is I take a 1 inch by 1/8 inch flat stock. I line it and cut it out, and then of course I drill holes in it like I did on Voodoo, and these shock mounts will come in and be welded into place as needed.
Let's creep while you and me repeat. This bittersweet heat is suffocating. I'm waiting and always hesitating. Kryptonite desires set my heart afire. Heart on fire. Set my heart afire.
Okay, the reason I moved on to Voodoo here is so I could show you a completed shock mount welded to the frame. Okay, so this is what they will end up looking like, or similar to. They're a little different on root beer because I've given them a little different shape, but they will be done the same way, yeah, is the shock mounts. On Voodoo, of course, the motor mount is down here, and I've got various holes drilled in it so I can line it up wherever I need it. And of course it's got to be cleaned up a little bit here. On Voodoo now, we're also going to be working on starting to hinge the doors and like that, and get her doors in place and start moving on with that. I've also got to figure out how I want to hinge the hood and all of that sort of thing. I have the fenders welded in place. I have the cowl panel welded into place, and moving back we can give you a little better view of Voodoo. So now I am, of course, as I said, working on all these little bits and pieces that are very hard for me to video for you, and the problem is they are also very time consuming to make. So I will show you as much as I can as I go along how I make the pieces and how I attach them and all of that. I just figured this would be a way at least you could see exactly how I do them, and then I will show you as much of my work as possible, yeah? So as well, I started making some of the motor mounts that now these are the pieces that you can buy them custom, or I make them here. I make these, I've made these out of aluminum. This is going to be a double motor mount for Voodoo. This will of course hook up. Let me grab Voodoo's motor here. So here's Voodoo's motor, which is basically out of a Wraith. It is a standard axial motor, and I am making the double motor mount for it. So that way I can attach two motors. See if I can do this one-handed. There we go. So this will make it so that I can attach two motors onto the one gearbox, yeah? This, of course, is a double. This one being a single motor mount. So I'm in the process of making some of those for the various models. This one is for Voodoo. This one, of course, is going to be for Ubi. As well, you'll notice this piece sitting here. This is something I've made for the full-size Voodoo. This is going to be her new gear shift. I took a piece of 3/4 inch round stock, and I wanted to extend her gear shift. I've always found it sits a little bit low for me. So what I am doing is I'm giving it a 14-inch extension so that it'll actually be up around dash height. I will, of course, weld this section onto the piece that goes into the transmission, and bolts up so that you can have your shifter, yeah? So that'll weld on to the shifter, and then I've got it curved so that it'll come up, and of course there is my gear shift handle, which is basically an old 1 1/8 inch wrench. Or 1 1/16, sorry. I actually cut it so that the size on the wrench still showed, and yeah, so making a custom gear shift for the full size Voodoo, she needs a little extension, so this is it. So I do a lot of things in the shop here that aren't related to RCs as well. I do a lot of side welding and that sort of thing, trying to make a buck. And yeah, so that's a little personal piece, but the RCs are what I love and what I love to do, and it's where I really get my kicks and have a lot of fun. So anyhow, I figured maybe I would show you some of my equipment I use for cutting the metal, so that at least you know how I do what I do, yeah? So we'll move on to that here for a minute. In my little shop, I'm a little cramped, but there's my chop saw, and of course the newest member of the fleet, Black Rose, sitting by the chop saw just out of the way and off the bench. Same thing, I've got to talk to the owner, see which way he wants to go with suspension on that. But there's my DeWalt 10-inch sliding compound miter saw that I cut up a lot of my hardwoods with, that I use for building the motors and that sort of thing, interior seats and whatever I need out of wood. I cut the little strips for the hardwood for the bed on that until I get it to a small enough point that I use smaller saws and hand coping saws that are obviously hand tools, yeah. And of course my scrap metal pile sitting over there. So the other piece I use, cutting down from big to small, is I use my Makita my Makita metal chop saw. I go with the big stock and cut it down to small enough pieces. So now, after the chop saw, now we go to a little smaller tool, which is a Ryobi 4.5 inch grinder that I use. I've removed the guard. Now, I don't always recommend that. It makes the tool a little bit unsafe, but it's the way I've always worked with them. Those guards, I find, are very cumbersome and get in my way, and I can't cut the tiny pieces that I need to make on the RCs with such a big cumbersome guard in my way. So that's one way. For sheet metal now, I use this dual saw. Now this dual saw is a really sweet piece of gear. It has a double blade. I'm trying to set it up on the bench here a little better so you can see it. It has double tungsten carbide blades. One moves one way, one moves the other way, so that it is a dual saw. I use this mainly for cutting my sheet metal and cutting heavy aluminum stock or cutting heavy bar stock. Now, I'm making a couple pieces actually for real life Voodoo to be able to mount my camper with. So this angle iron that is 1/2 inch thick, or sorry, 3/8 inch thick, and I use that dual saw to cut through it. As you notice, it gives me a real nice, sweet, clean cut, no ragged edges, and I don't have to use, of course, the oxyacetylene welding torch here and the cutting torch and burn up a lot of my gas. I can use this dual saw on all kinds of thicknesses of metal, and as you see, it makes a really beautiful, nice, clean cut out of whatever steel I want to cut with it. So that's kind of how I get to smaller and smaller bits. And then of course we move to the toolbox, where I have my assortment of files for filing everything down. I use a lot of punches and that sort of thing for forging. And of course then we get over here and I have my anvil set up, the chain around it to keep the singing of the anvil when I'm using it down to a minimum. The chain actually reduces that ringing sound that you get off of anvils. It doesn't doesn't echo quite as badly. And of course all the various hammers I use down there, mind my trash can, I'll block that. There's a lot of the various hammers and punches and chisels and so on I use. I even use, this is an old gas torch. Now this is for lead soldering originally. I use it for the purpose it was intended for. I learned that trick from my dad years ago while he was alive. He taught me how to lead solder as an auto body repair mechanic, and I still use this torch. I have another one that's cleaned up that I keep for show. So I inherited both of these tools from him, and they're just beautiful old pieces to have around, but they work and I use them for what they were designed for, and they're a beautiful piece of equipment. Okay, so again on Voodoo now, Miss Voodoo, we needed to put the doors on, and I had to do a little repair along this door as the skin started coming away from the frame. I sanded a little bit too far. Well, actually I ground it a little bit too far with the grinder, but I also had to cut the windows into the doors. Now they are attached. They're attached onto the front pillar. I used a 1/2-inch square stock and just put a slit down one side of it, crimped it on, welded it onto the door, and it makes the perfect hinge. Did the same thing with the back door, only instead of wasting a bunch of metal, I put a small little piece up top, bigger piece down at the bottom, and the door opens and closes really nicely. It will be eventually held in place with the rare earth magnets. As you notice, the back door's got a little bit of movement. I'll have to make the adjustment on that. All I'll do is do a little bit of a welding tack down at the bottom here where the hinge is, and it won't be able to drop down quite as far. So very easy fix, and you'll never see it when the model is done. So that's attaching the doors. The hood will be the same sort of affair. We need to raise the hood up and down. Sorry about that. Need to raise the hood up and down. So what I'll end up doing is putting a fulcrum here, weld to it a couple of tabs onto the bottom of the hood here on the corners, and that way I can just slip the hood in and it will open and close properly. And obviously needs a little bit of adjustment around the fenders and so on here, needs a little bit of straightening up, but that will happen of course when I build the front grille for Voodoo. So really this is the part where, or these are the parts where it is very hard to film because I haven't got the camera I would like to have to film it for you. It's also very time consuming to build these parts and get it filmed for y'all to look at. Now you're probably quizzing, I have a big space here. Well, it's because the roof isn't finished. The roof will come down and get a piece added on this edge. Nice little piece of tin that'll get welded in and come down and fill in this gap. As well, I will do the same with the bottom rocker panels. So the roof will come down, the rocker panels will have a little piece added to come up, and as well as the windshield pillar will also have another little piece added on. Fill in these gaps, and that makes the body look like it is supposed to, and very similar to the 1:1 scale Miss Voodoo.
Nightmares creep while you and me repeat. This bittersweet heat is suffocating. I'm waiting and always hesitating. Kryptonite desires set my heart afire. Heart on fire. Set my heart afire.
So moving on to Miss Moose, which is my 5-axle rotating wrecker. It's actually a replica of one that I found online, less the cab. I'm going to be using a Diamond T pickup cab instead of a Peterbilt cab. The generosity of a young fella here on YouTube, Malachi McKay, is the gentleman who sent me pictures that I could use from his channel and his rotating wrecker so that I could have a model of a actual modern working rotating wrecker. I have moved on to the boxes along the side. Now these will be all the toolboxes that house the controls. Now this is the box I made. It simply is 18.5 inches long by 3 inches wide by 6 inches tall. Now all I did simply was use 4 rivets here to fasten the box together. It will give me a solid box for the truck. Now those are the uprights. Of course, in between, now there is also the smaller toolbox on the side with the flip down door. Truth is, I basically made the box too long, not thinking, and I forgot that I needed room for an outrigger leg and the horizontal toolbox. So I just simply cut it off, and that gave me not only my horizontal toolbox, but it will also give me the room for the outrigger leg. It's a little hard here to show it to you on the bench, but basically there will be an outrigger leg on an arm that comes out and would come down and hold the truck in place when the rotator is up, and then the arm will swing back into place over this top toolbox, which of course right in here, I'm going to try and do this from the side, but right where that brass hole punch is will also be the side winch on the right side. There will be a winch right side, a side winch left side and right side at the front, just like Malachi's rotator. This is going to actually be quite a complicated build. It's also a very expensive build because of all of the winches and actuators and everything that are going to have to go into it, as well as the electronics. So these boxes are where I am going to hide some of that. I will be cutting out doors along here to replicate not only all the cabinets and so on that are on Malachi's wrecker, but those cabins or cabinets will allow me to hide a lot of the electronics I will need for the rotating wrecker going in between the boxes here, as well as the rear drag winch, as well as the stinger and the tow bar that come down from the back of the truck. So because I'm a little hard on space or tight on space here, it's a little hard to show you exactly where I am at right now, but I think you get the general idea. We've all seen tow trucks, we know what they look like. So these will become the right side cabinets, the right side horizontal cabinet with the room for the outrigger in between, and the leg to come right in here. And then when it swings out, of course, it will be parallel with the truck here. So it'll all work out really well. All I got to do is move on to building the left side. I will of course be attaching them to the frame by the back wall, and then I will fashion a couple braces along here so that I can hold everything together. And cutting all of these cabinets in here will get rid of the oil can effect that I always worry about, without having to put in a whole shitload of ridge lines in here to make the panel more stiff. As well as it being a box, it will also help cut down on that oil canning, except here on the horizontal box. It may oil can quite heavily. However, it's going to be the main source of my electronics and or battery storage. Again, I plan on going with a lithium-ion battery out of a motorcycle to run this rig. So I have tons of battery power. In fact, I can even carry 2 if I have to. So I will have a lot of juice, and I'm going to need a lot of juice to run all the electronics that are going to be going on in this truck. So that's the Miss Moose update. I have also started working on the deck on the London Calling wrecker. Now, it is just a simple flat deck, of course, and I really don't want to spoil the surprise, so that one I won't be showing on this video until the next London Calling video comes up. That I will make its own separate video, as well as Black Rose, and we just had a video on the double cabin cruiser build, so there's no need to update those. However, I have started another big boat. It's a personal project, and it's going to take a long time. It's just to give me something to, it's going to give me a model to of my own to run when I take my nephews out to run the double cabin cruisers. And may as well let you all know, I am going to do a replica of the old 1960s and 70s television series McHale's Navy and the PT-73. I'm going to make an exact replica of PT-73. It is going to be just under 5 feet long, 16 inches wide, and will likely turn out about as high, 16 inches from keel to top of the cabins as well. Anyway, that is the newest project on the books. I'll just turn around and show you here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's the keel of the boat there hanging from the ceiling. Sorry about the light glare over there. Yeah, so this is PT-73 that's hanging here. As you can see, she's quite a big boat, 5 feet from the transom to the front of the bow up here, and the rail where the torpedo tubes will go in, and the main cabin. Big body. It's going to be running a rather large battery so that I can run the triple screws that are going to go into this gun, as well as all of the electronics that will go into it. And I think that'll probably about do it for this video. I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you had fun watching this update video. And this has been YYC Designz Custom RCA Creations and a project update video. Have a great week, and have a great week, guys and girls. Don't work too hard and enjoy the hobby. Take care. Bye-bye.